Hey guys, so now that we've gotten through the base plan phase and done with our horizontal geometry and gone through geometrics memo and all the fastest path calcs and things like that, now we're ready to kind of get to our 3D geometrics and start modeling the roundabout. This can be done a ton of different ways, so I'm just going to show you what my preference is, and there's some other resources, people that YouTube videos that people do it different ways too that you can use. I wouldn't say there's like one absolutely correct answer to this, but I can give you some tips and tricks as we kind of go along. So right now all I really have done, I mapped out some of the east leg for this roundabout. So the rest of this stuff, this is just my horizontal geometry file I have referenced in. I have my other corridors that I'm tying into referenced in, and I have my terrain referenced, and the set as active in terms of that active terrain. So the first thing that I think in my mind, what I like to do first is map out this ICD. So I did do, originally I think the ICD was on scratch level 1. In the geometrics file, and because that's a full circle, I did do an offset partial and basically tried to put a tiny little gap in between to make it a continuous line instead of that full circle. You're gonna have issues if you try and use the full circle, so I just use the scratch level 20. I like to put all my vertical stuff on either do not construct level or something that just differentiates. A lot of it is going to go on these PGLs on the HMA level, which is red. So the white kind of helps show a difference there when I'm trying to do this. But so yeah, that first step then is really, you kind of got to run into a couple different considerations. You're really just trying to map out what you want your elevation to be going along this ICD and what those PGL tie-ins are going to be. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of go about this. For us, we had some issues. We had some really tight right of way and a potential owner who would maybe difficult in terms of selling. So we wanted to limit right away in this northeast quadrant. So in our head, we wanted to keep kind of this area as close to existing ground as possible to keep those slope stake lines pretty tight along this curve. Other consideration kind of had to do with drainage in terms of where do we want water to be flowing, where do we want our high and low points along this ICD. And then also the last one is kind of that cut and fill volume. Does it make sense in terms of an earthwork calculation? Like how high do we want this ICD to be relative to existing ground? And then kind of like those tie-in points too, like what's going on outside of the ICD as it approaches, so that way we can optimize that drainage. So I actually normally map this out just kind of on a piece of paper. I'll draw a circle, and there's, in my mind, if it's a 4-leg roundabout, PGL wise, you have this tie in here. So this is an important piece. This is an important piece where this ties in, and then where the legs meet. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pieces there that you're really trying to find elevations for. So I did kind of, in this example, again, we wanted this to be close to existing ground. I chose, based on existing earthwork, kind of this to be that high point. It just kind of made sense. There was already a pretty big ditch down here. So this being that low point, I think worked out pretty well. And this is kind of how I mapped that out. So and this can always change as you go, but this is I think a good starting point. I think it balances pretty well the existing earth that's out there. Obviously, there's a big ditch here that'll be filled. That's our low point. Right there is our low point, kind of in that ditch area. Our high point being up in this top corner here, and then this point here being pretty close to that existing ground. So we're hoping that there isn't a lot of, the slope stake line doesn't get pushed out too far. And for this, I personally like to just kind of do like a 0.5% try and get a 0.5% in between each line. So I targeted kind of, using AccuDraw, got the station along this, and then started pinpointing, started here at this elevation, matching existing ground, and then either going up or down depending on where my high and low point I decided were going to be are. And then mapped it out from there. Towards the end, you really just want these two elevations to match up. So whatever this is, 861.92, you want to match up on this side as well. 860. I'm not hovering over the right one, but they match up. You'll take my word for it. And so from there, I'll set that as active, and then I have targets now for my PGLs that these lines intersect, and I'm able to potentially, grab them, kind of similar to how I did over here. So that's the gist of the ICD, and some of those considerations you might want to have. Again, this can change depending, on drainage and things like that. But for right now, I think it's a good starting point. So from here, I'm going to start mapping out this leg, and I'll kind of show you some of the things that I do involved in that. So I don't really know what I want for what I'm going to do for my alignment for the roundabout. It's a little bit different than just like a straight shot alignment that you'd normally see. So on here, I'm going to turn on these because a lot of my geometry was kind of built off of these curves to start with. And from there, I am going to do some offsets on my scratch level 20. I'll do an offset partial from here, and I'm just going to put that at 6, tie that right into that center line, and then run to the end. And from here, you can just kind of keep going with this. We'll have to complex it and get that rolling. But here, I'm just really going to cross this splitter island nose to start, and that should be pretty center. And then just going to complex that geometry into one line. From this point, I'll profile this line to kind of get that approach going. The one nice thing about having it connected to the corridor is that I can just use this profile creation tool, target that center line, and it should come in for me. It's a little bit faint. It's just on that level, but it's right there. And now I know that I'm grabbing the same center line as before. For existing, if you're tying into that roundabout, I like to take maybe 10 feet and kind of see what that slope is. And then I will tie in right to the existing ground and then continue that slope, whatever I get from that 10 feet back. That way there isn't a big bump or anything in there. You can change the slope later on with vertical curves and stuff like that. But for this one, I'm just going to tie right into this. I already checked this before, but this is based off of this model here. Corridor is based off of our alignment, which is going down at negative 0.3. Oops, got a little sticky. A 0.3% slope on that, so I'm going to continue that same slope. Honestly, for the beginning, I think I'm just going to continue it on all the way to the end of this, kind of see where that lands in terms of this profile. I think it should work out pretty well. So we can always change this slope. We probably will. We're gonna have to tie in, to those target PGL elevations here. So within this stretch, there will probably be a vertical curve to some extent. This will have to change. 0.3 isn't just going to match right into that. But now that we have that kind of displayed, I'll probably skip over it, but really quick, the next thing would be to kind of set up a corridor for this. So we have that active profile. We can just call this west approach for this one. And for the template, we will just use the east and west. We'll go from 0, and we'll just stop it right at the front of this nose. Yeah, right about there is fine. I'll add in, it's got a bunch of display rules in it, this template does. So the pavement lines might not match perfectly right up, but I just have to add in some references to that corridor and everything will be fine. I'll do that later. Right now I'm just trying to get to, this stuff is pretty straightforward in terms of templates and corridors and stuff, but really I'm trying to get into how to model these terrains for the ICD or for the Splitter Island section. So with that, I'm gonna do an offset. I do like to set up, the Splitter Island nose can get a little bit tricky sometimes just because of the curvature and you know how delicate it kind of is in this area, geometrically speaking. So I like to split these up and make two terrain sections kind of around the nose. In my mind, it just works a little bit better. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. But ultimately, I think the important part is this section. So really quick, I'm gonna turn on this AccuDraw here. I like to go from that center. Doesn't really matter too much. I'm just gonna put some dummy lines out there right now, and then go from there. Actually, okay. These geometry lines are kind of the important part. Connect that worked. Make sure that that's still on there. What is that one? Get some lines going all the way through. Okay, so now that we got some line work kind of copied in here, I'm just going to kind of go through and make sure these are all intersecting, because we're kind of going to start separating from that corridor, making some terrains here. So I'm gonna complex this line and this line together. Create that. This is one piece. This is one piece. And then from here, I'm just going to kind of start piecing this together. This is what is really kind of the nose detailing. There's a ton of ways that you can do this, so this isn't not necessarily saying the best, but this is one that's worked pretty well for me. So start out, we're going to go and we're going to hit that crown point that's coming through. We know that this should be going down. It's it's perpendicular, so it should be going down at 2%. So I'm just going to attach to that. Go -2 across, and map out that. That's what's happening with my template. This way is just that -2 or +2 slope going back, since we're a little bit past that area. And then we're just going to complex this vertically. Again, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. This is just one way I like to kind of check, because sometimes some funky stuff can happen around the nose that you don't want necessarily to see. So now this line is kind of mimicked. Can't really see it there, but from here, this is kind of part of that reason, we want to continue that 0.4 or 0.3% slope this to show up that 0.3% slope that's going down. And this you can't just map out at 0.3% because there's a lot of curvature and stuff like that going on. This one's pretty straight in terms of that edge line, so I'm just going to get that profile intersection point. And then I am going to continue this down now at that 0.3% that we had going from our alignment line. Take that all the way down. Attached a little bit farther, but that's not going to cause any issues. Come on. There it is. Set that as active, so you'll see that one coming out. Then we kind of build back towards essentially figuring out what this profile needs to be, just because of that curvature can kind of make it tricky. So from here, just do profile creation again, intersection point. I want to show it on that one from this line. It's all kind of tied into itself then, vertically, which is nice, and dynamically, so it'll change. If you change one element, it'll all kind of change with it, and ideally at the, while holding some of these rules true, like the 2% slope and whatever this point is, and that'll change all of your other things. That way, if you change that slope from 0.3 to like 0.4 on your alignment right here, everything else kind of gets tweaked along with it. So then from this, you should be able to kind of map out a couple things, if I can get it to come up. I guess I can always hit the open profile window, but I do like to sometimes check profile from this profile at 2% going up, so you can kind of see, well, you should have been able to see, since this is maybe I'm just lagged out a little bit. Normally it'll come in that way, and that's a good check to make sure you're still, it's obviously, not going to be a perfectly straight line, but it's a good check. So this is coming in, so that's good. So you can check your profile there. You can also check that. And now we can kind of map these out together, so we know it wants to go from here, over. You can see this is at 0.6, so it wasn't even, with that curvature and stuff like that in it, it's never going to be that same. This one's going to be a lot closer to that 0.3 that we had, but this one changes. And then we'll connect those two down, and then really this is just going to continue. This is pretty much perpendicular, so I'm going to keep this going at that 2% slope and just end it there, and that way we have a tie-in point for that side. And yeah, then I'll just complex this. Just a little lag behind. Set that as active. And now we kind of have in here some 3D line strings that we can create a train from, which we could do now or we could do later, but we'll just pop them in now and I'll show you. Go to train from elements. Got those selected. We'll call this West Entrance 1, since there will be another one right afterwards. We'll select those. It looks like it didn't triangulate super well here. Sometimes you don't get that nose to triangulate, and that there's a couple things you can do, but for now I'm not too worried about it. And I've kind of submitted things like that before that just don't, no matter how much you put on the edge method or the triangles, the slivers and everything, it's not going to fully triangulate, but it's good for now. So in here I'm just going to go back and turn on my PGL lines and go into the geometry and do some offsets on this. Get those going. Get this one going. We'll do a partial here because I think this is connected. So we'll go from here to the end. And here to end there. Oh, I didn't like it very much. You can see the line. There it goes. Alright, and then we'll turn back off just so I can kind of see everything again, and we'll complex some of these lines just because it's easier to get our profiles in there. So let's check this one out first. Now we do have two targets on each end. We have a workable length here to kind of get that vertical curve in, depending on how those two targets work out. So we'll select this. I know this intersects, and I know this intersects. So here are 2 points that we need to kind of mesh in together. We want to keep that same slope, relative to this, which was that 0.3. And this is where like you can change some things if we need to, because this is looking like it's going to end up being pretty high, pretty steep crest curve potentially. I want to put this somewhere in between. This is almost looking like a 1.5. In between 0.3 and 1.5 on crest. If I bring up the site guidelines for this. I've downloaded it on your dimes. This is fine. Wait for that to open up. I believe crest is pretty small. For this, I'll probably do design speed of 35 miles an hour, just because at this point, I think it's going to be posted at 25 coming into a roundabout. I just think that makes sense. So we got this up. And I believe right in the beginning here, we got these two charts. So for a stopping site for a crest curve, which this is a crest curve at 30, design curvature is 19 multiplied by the algebraic difference between the grades. And I always round this up quite a bit. So if this is 0.3 and that's 1.5, 1.8 is that algebraic difference times 19, 34. So we'll probably just put in a 50-foot length curve in here, just to keep it. We got plenty of space, so not too worried about it. Trim both, and then we'll keep this one going past because we want it to kind of tie into this little elbow. We'll keep that going at the negative 1.5. I do prefer, these to kind of be coming up and in, just from a roundabout perspective, as this is going to be 1.5% perpendicular this way. Having this kind of come in, at like going up at like a 1 to 1.5% is going to be a little bit of a smoother transition. In reality, though, there's no way all four of these legs are going to be coming up and into this roundabout. I know for a fact, like this leg, in terms of earthwork, it's already built up so high we're tied into existing. We can only tie in so far back. We're just not going to undercut and make this big, curve to have it be smoother at the entrance. And ultimately, it's not going to be too big of a deal. they're going to be going slow, going around a curve and things like that. So I wouldn't worry too much, but keep that in mind. Like if you can, I know this one came in under and was coming up at that kind of at that one to 1.5, and that just seems to be really smooth and work out really well. But again, roundabouts are all about balancing competing objectives. So if you can't get it to work, not a big deal. So now we got this PGL in there. It's targeted. It's right on that line. We can start building the outside, and this one's going to change a little bit. It's never going to be exactly 2%, obviously, because we're going down this way. So it works here, but like in this instance, we're going up in elevation. So this isn't going to be projected exactly 2% off, because this tie-in point is actually higher than this tie-in point. And so you can run into, you definitely want to check that afterwards in some spots, but this is going to eventually break away kind of from this, where it's not going to be like a easy 2% on your grading and detailed sheets. So from here, I'm going to complex these together, these lines here, so we can get a clean profile. I'll check this profile, and there are some targets that we have in here as well. And actually, just before we do that, let's actually check this target. And this target can be found. I offset this piece earlier, that 10 feet. This is kind of just unique to the 2-lane to 1-lane roundabout, so you don't necessarily need to go through this, but I'll show you really quick. I'm just going to bring this up. I am going to profile this element using the profile by slope from element tool here. Profile that one. We want it to come from here at 1.5% for the roundabout. And that should come through. There it is. Now we got a line out here. Really, we can go ahead and hit this little elbow then as well, using those two targets. This time I'll use the open. It's just not like it. Come on. There we go. Profile intersection point. And we're acting slow. Look at that one. This intersects and this intersects. And there's that line. We just want to connect these two. Doesn't look crazy sharp. 2.5 is pretty high, but it's not going around a curve, and anything over 3 I might be a little bit worried and may rethink that, but such a small distance. So. And then really from here we can kind of get this edge line. And do the same thing. Should come out to be exactly 1.5%. But I like that these are dynamic, these kind of green, you snap to them. If one thing changes, if I end up changing this ICD, then these will change as well. This projection over will change, and everything else will change. You can always kind of check it. Let's see, it might not be exactly 1.5. But since we snap to them, they're just going to work a little bit more efficiently for me. So now we got almost all these pieces here. I do see a small gap. I wonder what's happening in that. Maybe I missed a piece of So I'm going to drop this element. I will offset entire element. There is one tiny little guy in there. Go back and complex this. Nope, don't want that. I want to get it. Yeah. That little guy in there. There we go. Alright. No breaks. So now again in here we'll have two targets that will show the profile intersection point of. So we got that one coming through. And I like to do this one because it's on the very edge. I know it is. In here, you know, we're going to keep on kind of going with that theme of that 0.3 at least to start. On that slope, and we know we need to tie into here, so we're going to have another crest. I also, I like to kind of keep it at that 2%, mainly as long as I can, so I like to use this profile by slope from element. And basically shove a 2% down on that just to see where that lines up. So I want this to be shown. I want it to come from here. I want that at -2. It won't work the whole way, but it'll give me an idea. So like it starts breaking off. That must have been my curve up in here. Starts breaking off from my 0.3, which was going along that. So if I can help it, which in this instance doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do much, but it kind of tells me where I should put that curve, which should probably be back farther back here to kind of match. So like if I put this curve, let's say I do it at like a 0.7. 0.7 wasn't too bad. And, you know, we just go back to a random spot. Might have to be a little bit higher than 0.7. Let's go 0.75, maybe 0.75. And obviously these are both negatives, so really you're only looking at that 0.45 times the crest, which was 19. It's just like very, very small for sight distance. I'm just going to put the curve at another 50. Just to have that extra space. That's kind of what we wanted. Trimming them both. So it definitely splits away from that, you know, 2%, but we're down, and this thing is going to flow, you know, into our low point anyways. So I think that this will be all right. If we wanted to, we could potentially go into this, so we could push that curve out here farther, and that way we stay at that 2% a little bit longer. But in my mind, this should work out pretty well. So now I'm going to complex it together, set that as active. And now we have kind of that first one completed, which we can make a train out of then. Again, this one's a little bit different, so I come out into here. Ultimately, when I do my ICD, which I'll show you guys here in a little bit, this is going to end up being the one lane limits will be from here to here, and so it'll come out, and this should match the same elevation. And then this section from here to here will be the 2-lane extended and come out to this white line out here. And then 1 lane, and then 2 lane, and so it'll look like end up looking like a little pie. But if you do this with all the same lanes, you know, this cutting back, it could just be one piece with a little sliver essentially at your tie-in point. So alright, so now that we got all of our legs tied in, we can start all of our terrains created. We can start placing surface templates. So the surface template is just a depth. Your terrain is really going to make up your grading and things like that. So we'll just hit apply surface template. Now that all these terrains are kind of done, this is my splitter island travelway surface template. So it's just 3 layers of HMA. I can show you later, but it's basically just came from our pavement design, and there is no slopes or anything like that. The only thing that matters in these surface templates is the depth. After that, it's going to connect the points for you and kind of give you your slopes, and then you can pull detailed grades off of this by selecting the terrain model for the given location that you're looking for, and just pull elevations directly from there. So as I go through, I'm just going to click, and we can probably speed this part up, but essentially just placing these surface templates on my terrains. And then I'll speed up a little bit, and we'll get to showing you the template for the ICD and kind of how I'm going to place that. This is a little bit of a tricky one again, just because it's sliced in a 2-lane and a 1-lane, but yeah. Alright, so now that we have all of our surface templates placed, at least for right now, we'll kind of work on hitting this ICD. This will be done. I'm honestly just going to use a linear template. I don't think a corridor. You could use a corridor, I guess, if you wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary. But I am going to show you really quick the template library, the inscribed. So this was my splitter island travelway. It's just 3 layers, HMA, given to us by the pavement design, and some ag base. And again, going from the center line, there is no slope. None of this matters. It's going to connect to whatever your lines are in your terrain, and it'll form that cross slope for you. So these inscribed, I have to have 2 of them. Again, a 2-lane and a 1-lane. But this is basically building that center island. So this is your ICD, your travel way going around, and then you have your curb here. You have your truck apron, and then there's a little bit of pavement decoration that's going to go back. This has to do with sight distance and stuff like that, with some embankment and some different other things going on. And this is just a hinge line that roughly goes to the middle. You can change these depending on what your ICD is. But yeah, essentially we're just going to attach that center, the 2 lanes the same, just with a little bit longer section here. But we're basically just going to attach that to this, full, almost continuous line, but slight split, and we'll have to split it here as well. So there'll be 5 pieces really to this pie as I'm going through. So I'm going to do it through a linear template. You could do a corridor if you wanted to, but I just think this is pretty easy. So looking for this one here, the full one, we'll select from our list, and we'll do the inscribed. We'll do the 2-lane first. Doesn't really matter, I guess. 2-lane starts, again, you kind of have to pay attention to where my beginning and end is, like right here. I want the 2-lane to pick up there, and I want it to end here. And yeah, you want it inside. Don't really need a description, but we'll see how that kind of plays out. But ideally it should take up this space right there for me, and all be at that same elevation that I tied into from these legs and from this section there. So that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. So we can do another one. We'll keep the same. We'll do the other 2-lane one. Starts on this end, that section to that section. I might have messed that up just a little bit. I'm going to click out. Try it again. 2-lane. Let's see if I can get the snap right. There we go. That looks right. Hopefully that's another piece of the pie. There's a little bit of overlap here, but it's not going to be a big deal. This stuff is good for earthwork calculations and stuff on that embankment. So there's that one. Then we'll go in, we'll select that one lane, inscribed. And that's going to go from this station here all the way to this station there. That takes up that piece, and this one will have to be split into two because we'll have to stop it at the 0, 0, go to that section, and then we'll have to go from here to the very end. Uh-oh, that does not look quite right. Oh, I know what I did wrong there. I selected the outside, and I should have selected the inside one. So we'll delete that really quick. One way that you can do this, which I haven't done yet. I like having these individual lines. Those are out here for this stuff, but now that we're here to it, we can go ahead and just offset entire element. And we'll do that by 10 feet, which is that inside. And then what we'll do is we will just project. We'll just do the profile by slope from element. We want to profile this one. We'll reset to complete. We want it to come from there, and we want it to be 1.5%. And that should match. So now we'll have another line kind of mimicking, yep, kind of going through there. But it should match everything that we've been doing. And then I'll take my linear template and I want to apply it to that for the one lane. And again, the one lane is going to go from that station to that station. There we go. That should look a little bit better. Yeah, okay. So now this is all lining up correctly. Ideally in a single lane, if it's one lane or two, at least just consistent lineage between the roundabout, you won't have to go through this kind of headache of a modeling issue. But here I'm just going to give this 0, 0. That'll be the start. The end can be right to that point right there. It's gonna load. All right, and then for the last piece, do the single lane. We'll take the start station off. Get that station, and then here, you just can't go past it. So if I'm at point, yeah, it's pretty good. That should be the last little bit. There it goes. All right. And you can always kind of take a peek. This is going to tell you probably more just getting down at that ground level as to what, if you have any issues, I guess, or anything like that, how this is transitioning into this. If you got any bumps and things like that, any drastic grade changes, you can kind of check it out. Another cool feature you can do in this 3D view, just for like your own checks, you can turn everything off in here and go ahead and turn on your boundary and your proposed terrains, and then in here, once you highlight, you're actually able to go in and turn on flow arrows on these if you wanted to see where some of your water's draining. Just if you're having a hard time, I won't do it for all of them, but then if you go in and you turn them all on, then you can kind of see where that direction of flow is going, and that can be pretty handy when just evaluating this, making sure you're kind of at that. For the inside, for the splitter islands, this is going to be mainly done through again linear templates. You're just going to place linear templates along this profiled edge line. You have to detail out if you have crossings and stuff like that. So for example, for this one, I'll probably end up going into this line here and kind of, I think, complexing these and profiling these to tie into each other and gapping this out. But I can give you kind of an example of like what you would be doing for this. You would really just be dropping this linear template, find a line that you're looking to do it on. So you can pull them from here. You could go ahead and hit your end conditions, splitter island, curb and gutter. This one's a little modified, so this is kind of the one that I'm looking for this. Go to the beginning, and then here I'm probably just going to go to this point on my opening, and it'll go ahead and drop in some curb and gutter for you. What I do for the splitter islands, typically after I get this whole curb and gutter on each side mapped out, I will end up making a linear template with the back of a terrain again from the back of curb line here. You can click it and isolate it. It's this one right there. So you can grab all these and make a terrain from that, and then do another surface template, and that's just like a concrete, whatever you guys end up doing for your inside splitter island. That'll fill that gap. And really along this, like I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and I have some sidewalk in here, so apply a linear template. I think I have one made that has some of the sidewalk done. Guess we'll see. So like this 10-foot sidewalk, we'll use that, and we'll set it on this line, 10-foot sidewalk, and we'll detail this out. But we'll go from here all the way to that end. See how that looks. Haven't messed with this template in a little bit. But it'll have all your end conditions. You can target slopes and ditching and stuff like that. Anything within this area. So there's kind of our curve lining up with our, got a little bit of a gap. Something's going on there that I'll have to check out. But then we could do the same thing on this side. Bring it to about that point. I'll have to detail out the the crossings that are going in here. But this will definitely get you going. Let's see if this one kind of laid down. Yep. Yeah. After that, you should be in pretty good shape.